Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. Chapter 8. Experimental Fascination. In this work, I shall give the student an idea of the methods of conducting experimental work in that phase of fascination which has been called mental impression, etc., following the lines of the best investigators and experimenters in America and Europe. My reason for so doing is that the student may have a thorough idea of the practical work, even though he may not wish to conduct such experiments in person. I think that everyone should be made acquainted with these things as a matter of knowledge, and also for purposes of the self-protection which arises from an understanding of the subject. Startling phenomena explained. I also desire to satisfy the careful student and investigator that the feats, tests, and phenomena which have heretofore been regarded by the general public as inseparably connected with mesmerism, hypnotism, and sleep conditions may be reproduced without the aid of sleep conditions, and without the hocus-pocus of the public performer. The entire phenomena of mesmerism, hypnotism, etc. may be produced by simple and scientific methods along the line of mental fascination, by means of mentative induction, without any attempt to produce sleep as a necessary precedent condition. When this matter is thoroughly understood by the public, the glamour and sensationalism of public mesmeric and hypnotic performances will vanish, and the subject will receive the scientific consideration that it merits. But at the same time, people will begin to realize the mighty power of the mental influence that is capable of producing such startling manifestations in a waking state, and will seek to guard themselves against the abuse of the power. Hypnotic performances condemned. It should be almost unnecessary for me to add that I have no sympathy with the public performances of that phase of mental impression known as hypnotism, mesmerism, etc., in which subjects are made to go through all sorts of foolish and absurd performances. Outside of my objection to people surrendering their will to another in this way, I feel that such exhibitions are lacking in feeling, good taste, and often in decency. To say the least, it is making horseplay of a scientific phenomenon. I have nothing in sympathy with such manifestations or exhibitions, and shall speak of them in this work only to condemn the methods employed. Scientific methods. In my remarks and instruction, along the line of scientific methods, along the lines of the best authorities upon the subject, and in accordance with the rules observed at the best conducted experiments of such authorities, at which experiments I have frequently been present, I wish my students to place themselves in a scientific attitude of mind, just as if they were attending lectures on the subject at some leading university in its scientific course. The subject is a strictly scientific one and should be approached, considered, and investigated only in accordance with the scientific spirit of investigation. It is not a matter of fun or idle amusement. I trust that I have made my position on this point sufficiently clear to all, so that there may be no understanding regarding the same. The importance of the knowledge. I do not advise all of my students to engage in this experimental work, for there is no necessity for them so doing. What I am really trying to do is to acquaint them with the methods used in these experiments and the results obtained. In this way, they may acquire an extended knowledge of the subject, which will enable them to really understand the different phases and prevent them from entertaining erroneous ideas concerning the matter. This knowledge will also enable them to detect any symptoms of an attempt to use this force upon them in everyday life. When a person becomes acquainted with the true inwardness of a thing, so that he recognizes it whenever he sees it, there is little danger of his falling into error regarding it. The knowing of a thing is half the battle of repulsing it. And with this understanding, and with this explanation, I shall now proceed to describe the work in experimental fascination, now being performed by scientific investigators in the colleges and other places in this country and in Europe. Favorable environments. The investigator of experimental fascination soon learns that certain environmental conditions have a marked effect on the degree of success attending his experiments, and, accordingly, he endeavors to surround his experiments with the best conditions possible, as indicated by his experience. A knowledge of these conditions is an important thing for an investigator and experimenter along these lines. Desirable conditions. The investigator finds that he can obtain much better results when his experiments are conducted in a quiet place, the atmosphere of which is conducive to calm, undisturbed, peaceful mental states. This atmosphere affects both operator and subject, allowing the former to concentrate his mind and the latter to give his full attention and to rest in a passive mental state. It is well if the experiments be conducted in a room remote from the street, and as far as possible apart from the rest of the house, so that noises of either cannot well penetrate. The experimenter should also take measures to prevent interruption, for the latter will interfere with his concentration and the subject's attention. Sense impressions. The best experimenters see that their experimenting room is furnished plainly, having no pictures or decorations, etc., calculated to attract the subject's attention. A soft carpet, which will deaden the sound of footsteps, is advisable. I have seen some experimenters go even so far as to place rubber tips or cushions on the feet of the chairs, tables, etc. in the experimenting room, in order to obviate such noises. The room should be kept at a comfortable temperature, neither too warm nor too cold, as either extreme will make the subject uncomfortable and less able to give his full attention to the experimenter. I have heard of cold rooms, draughts, etc. interfering with the best conducted experiments, and every experimenter is aware of the fact that a close, sultry day will interfere seriously with his experiments. Care should be taken to avoid the glare of light in the room. Shades of soft greens or blues are advised, and these same colors should be used in the decoration of the rooms by the experimenter who wishes to obtain the best results. Remember the expression, a dim, religious light, and you will get the right idea. Psychological effects. Some experimenters burn a little incense in the room before the experiment is performed, the same having a tendency to quiet the nerves and impart a feeling of restfulness to those in the room. You will notice that the conditions that tend to produce the most successful results in these experiments are the same that the ceremonial churches of all races have adopted in their services, etc. This fact needs but bare mention to the thinker. It is well known that soft, quiet religious music will produce a psychological condition in which persons become quite impressionable, and some of the French psychologists have taken advantage of this fact. The whole theory rests upon the production of the feeling of ease in the subject. Consequently, it is scarcely necessary to add that the chairs should be very comfortable and easy. The room of a leading suggestionist. I may conclude these remarks upon desirable conditions by quoting from an article for a magazine written by myself about 7 years ago under a pseudonym. The article described the experimenting room of a leading American suggestionist and a series of experiments conducted before a class of investigators and students, at which I had been present. I think that the description will convey to your minds the ideal conditions for experiments along these lines. I said in the article, the room is well ventilated and lighted, although there is an absence of glare. It is remarkably quiet and free from disturbing sounds and sights. The air of seclusion and remoteness from the scenes without being very marked. The impression grows upon one and reminds him of the interior of some quiet old rural chapel on a summer afternoon, when all around seems to indicate the lack of existence of an outside world, save the occasional breeze faintly fanning the cheek, and some muffled sound seeming to come from some far distant point, and perhaps the droning of some stray bumblebee that had chanced to float in the open door. The semi-religious air is heightened by the dim religious light, and by the voice of the experimenter as he gives the repeated suggestion to the patient, in the same monotonous tone, encouraging and hopeful, and at times reminding one of an earnest prayer. The surroundings, the stillness, the tone of the operator, the reclining position of the patient, all give the strongest suggestion of quiet, calm, peace, ease, and rest, freedom from care and worry, relief from pain and trouble, nirvana. The influence of these suggestive surroundings is distinctly felt by the visitor, and he also unconsciously assumes the role of the attendant at the chapel. The writer was told by some of the patients that they soon become totally oblivious of the presence of the class, and are to all intents and purposes alone with the operator, with no other thoughts than the suggestions being made to them. I might add that the suggestions given to the patients at the beginning of the treatment were calculated to increase the desired mental state of rest, calm, and quiet. How to determine impressionability. The first thing that the experimenter does is to determine the degree of impressionability of the impressionable. There are a number of ways to determine this. One of the methods that have been found the most effective is to have the impressionable partially extend his left hand and arm until an easy position is obtained. Then have him hold the hand with palm downward, and then raise or elevate the third finger of that hand, generally known as the ring finger, holding the other finger steady and down on a level with the palm. Then tell him that you will proceed to will that he shall feel a tingling sensation in the finger, which feeling will increase gradually, and will then begin to extend up the hand and wrist and then up the arm to the shoulder. Tell him that the feeling will be faint at first, but that it will begin to tingle more and more in a few moments, and then it will extend in the manner stated. Then concentrate your own mind on the feeling you desire to produce in him, and will strongly that it be produced. After a moment, ask him whether he does not feel the faint tingling sensation. But note this, ask him in such a way as to give him the positive suggestion that he does. This way, for instance, you feel the tingling already, don't you? This form of question is really a suggestion, for you state the thing before asking the question. When you say "don't you," emphasize the "don't" sharply and positively. You will find that the sensation is perceived in a moment or two, in a large percentage of cases, and in many cases, the more pronounced results are obtained. The degree of sensation produced determines the degree of impressionability of the person tested. When you conclude the test, in each case, be sure to take the subject's hand, grasping it firmly and shaking it gently, saying, "Your hand is all right now, all right," emphasizing the words "all right" and saying them firmly and positively. Always say these things with an air of conviction and assurance, for there is a great suggestive quality in such tones. Testing a roomful of people. If you are testing a number of people, a roomful for instance, you should pass rapidly over the number to be tested until you have finished. You may test the whole roomful at one time, as above, if you desire. Do not act as if you were attaching much importance to the test, telling them that you are merely testing them for impressionability, etc. But when you have finished, you will know just the degree of impressionability of each person in the room, and you will thereby be enabled to select the most impressionable for the next test. Impressing the subject. Having selected the desired number of impressionables, pick out one of them and ask him to stand up before you, looking you straight in the eye. See direction for acquiring the magnetic gaze in a later chapter, saying to him, in a quiet but firm, positive tone, words to this effect: "Now give me your entire attention. I wish you to fix your attention firmly upon me and what I am saying, for in this way only can the best results be obtained. You must forget everything and everybody else in the room, and must hear only my voice and feel my thoughts. Make yourself perfectly receptive and passive to my thoughts and words. There must seem to be no one else here but you and I. You must see no one else, must hear no other voice, must think no other thoughts but mine. Give me your full attention now, and open yourself to the inflow of my thoughts." Talk to him a few moments in this strain, and then say, "That's right. Now you are giving me your full attention. You are now feeling my thought. All is going well," etc., etc., in an encouraging tone, in the same spirit as you would to a child who is trying to perform some task under your direction. Inducing relaxation. Instruct him to relax all his muscles, to take the tension off of them. Tell him that in so doing, he will draw his will away from his muscles, which is just about what really happens. If he seems to be slow at grasping the idea, give him a practical illustration of relaxation by lifting one of his hands and then letting it drop. If it does not drop freely, then he has not relaxed. Try him until he learns just what relaxation means. This practice will bring about a state of passivity which will tend toward success in your experiments. Exercises in relaxation. It is of the greatest importance that the subject of the experiments be brought into a passive condition of mind. And the best way to induce this desired condition is to bring about a passive condition of body, for the latter will have a reflex action on the mind, according to well-established laws. The following exercises will aid you to bring about the relaxed condition, preparatory to your psychological experiments. Exercises. Instruct the subject to withdraw his will from his right hand, making it perfectly limber, so that he may swing it loosely from his wrist. Then have him so swing it backward and forward. Repeat with the left hand. Then have him impart to the hands a twisting motion, to and fro, from the wrist, of course letting them twist about limply. Then have him withdraw the will from his arms, and then shake and twist them about the shoulder, like a pair of empty coat sleeves. Then lift his arms up above his head, and allow them to fall like a dead weight to his sides. The falling must be occasioned by the weight of the arm, and not aided by his will. His will must be withdrawn entirely. The above exercises may be varied and amplified, as found desirable. Putting subjects at ease. Some of the best experimenters take considerable time in putting at ease the persons who offer themselves as subjects for psychological experiments, and at the same time, they bring about the desired state of relaxation. They realize the distaste and fear that anything like hypnotism inspires in the minds of people, owing to the public performances thereof, and they avoid any suggestion of similar conditions. They generally begin by talking of the value of relaxation, and how few people are able to relax their muscles. Then, they illustrate the matter by showing the subjects how few of them are able to relax easily. This leads to the trying of the above-mentioned relaxation exercise, or similar ones, which, as you will see in a moment, leads directly to the first real test of mental induction and suggestion, which is known as the falling forward test, which is one of the simplest tests known to the psychological laboratory. From that test to others is merely a matter of successive steps. So the experimenter really begins his work with the process of putting the subject at ease and training him in relaxation. In this connection, I would say that very few people know how to relax, and some teaching is necessary in the majority of cases. The above exercises should be sufficient. The primary test. After instructing the subject in relaxation, say to him, "Now, look me straight in the eyes, and let my thought act through you. You are feeling an inclination to fall forward. Fall forward. Fall forward toward me. Do not fight it, but yield to it. Yield to it, I say. I will catch you as you fall. Now fall forward toward me slowly. That's it. You are leaning a little now. Come on. Come on. Come on now. This way. This way. Now. Extend your two hands, one on each side of his head, but a little in front of him, so that he can see the palms of your hands, which should face each other. Then, as you repeat the suggestions mentioned above, draw your hands slowly away from him, as if you were drawing him by some physical power. This is a strong suggestion, which will render him more susceptible to your will. The more reality you throw into the acting out this drawing, the more strength you will put into your willing, and the more readily will he obey. Using the will. While saying these words, look intently into his eyes, and will that he fall forward. In a moment, he will begin to sway forward a little, and if you keep up the concentrated will and suggestions, he will fall forward toward you. Be ready for him, and catch him with your hands. This test is far more simple than it would seem from reading the description of it, and is capable of being produced in a large percentage of cases, where the persons will allow their minds to become passive to yours. Where there seems to be a resistance, tell the person to hold the thought that he is inclining forward toward you. Some find it easier to feel the falling forward sensation with their eyes closed than with them open. With others, the reverse is true. Reversing the test. After you have succeeded in this experiment, stand behind the person about 1 yard and concentrate your gaze upon a point at the base of the skull, that is, where the neck joins the head. Then tell him that he will experience a falling backward sensation, just as he did before in the falling forward test. Be sure to tell him that you will catch him when he falls, etc., in order to reassure him. Use the same tones, etc., as in the falling forward test, except that you will substitute the word backward for forward. In a few moments, you will obtain the same result as in the falling forward. Both of the above experiments are among the easiest tests known to experimenters, but they are important inasmuch as they serve to inspire confidence in himself, in the mind of the experimenter, and a passive confidence in the mind of the impressionable. Then it is always well to begin by some easy tests, and then work up by degrees to the more difficult ones, even upon subsequent occasions. The fastened palm test. The next test may be as follows. Tell the impressionable to place the palm of his hand upon your own, allowing it to rest there a few moments, withdrawing all of his will from his hand, and leaving it perfectly relaxed and like a dead weight. Then tell him that you are going to fasten his hand to yours by thought. Then, looking him straight in the eyes, say, in a strong, firm, positive tone, "Now you can't take your hand away. You can't, I say. Try, but you can't. Try, try, try. You can't, you can't, you can't, I say," etc. Always accent the word can't in these experiments, for that is the word you wish to emphasize and drive home in his mind. And you must, of course, accompany your words by the thought, "You can't, you must, will that he cannot." Remove the impression by saying, "All right, now, all right." The locked fingers test. Your next test is that of fastening his own hands together. This is accomplished by getting him to lock the fingers of his two hands together, holding them as tight together as he is able to do, using his will actively in so doing. Then say to him, "Now do not resist me, but remain as you are. Now you can't unloose your hands. You can't, I say, you can't. Try, but you can't," etc., etc., at the same time concentrating your gaze and will upon his hands, thus holding them together. It may help you in the beginning to hold his hands together with your own, at the first, and then gradually loosen your own until they are entirely away from his hands, repeating your suggestions meanwhile. Remove the impression as previously instructed. The clenched fist test. Your next test may be that of preventing him from unclenching his fist. Proceed as in the last test, telling him to clench his fist together as tight as he can, and then you must say to him, "Now you can't unclench it. You can't, I say," etc. It will be some time before he can get his fist unclenched. Remove the impression. Rotating hands test. The next test may be that of making him rotate his hands. Proceed by telling him to relax his hands somewhat, but begin to rotate them around each other in an outward direction. Then say to him, "Faster, faster, faster. Faster, as fast as you can." Then, when his hands are rotating rapidly, say to him, "Now you can't stop them. You can't, I say. Try, but you can't, etc." And it will be some time before he will be able to stop. Remove the impression by the suggestion, "All right, all right." The drawing test. Your next test may be that of drawing him forward or backward toward you. This is accomplished by standing before or behind him, as the case may be, and telling him that he will walk toward you, backward or forward as you wish. The command must be accompanied by the will. Remove the impression. Akin to the last two tests as follows. 1. Preventing him from stepping out at all. And 2. Preventing him from stepping outside of an imaginary circle that you have drawn on the floor. These tests are of course accompanied by the appropriate suggestions and use of the will. Remove the impression. The chair tests. Similar tests, such as preventing him from sitting down in a chair, or causing him to remain seated in a chair, unable to rise, may be made in the same way. Remove the impression. Other tests. Another common test is that of giving the impressionable a cane, telling him to hold it fast, and then telling him sharply that he cannot throw it down, for it is sticking to your hands, etc. Remove the impression. A similar test is preventing him from lifting a light weight, a box, or a chair by your suggestions of "you can't," accompanied by the use of your will. Remove the impression. The name test. Some experimenters try the test of preventing the impressionable from speaking his name by their can't suggestions. A variation of this is making him say his name is Tom Jones, or some other fictitious name, by the mere strong suggestion of Tom Jones. "It's Tom Jones, I say," following upon the sharp question, "What's your name?" Strange as it may appear, this test is successful in many instances. Remove the impression. The eyelid test. The test of fastening the eyelids is accomplished by having the impressionable fasten his eyelids tight together, keeping them in that position for a few moments, when the experimenter says, "Now you can't open them. You can't. Try, but you can't," etc., etc., as above described. Release the impression. Stiffening the arm or leg is accomplished along the same general lines using the appropriate suggestions and will. Remove the impression. The catalepsy test. The catalepsy feat of the professional hypnotists is but an enlargement of the above muscular tests. and consists of producing a condition of rigidity all over the body of the subject. I do not advise conducting this test, for accidents have occurred in some cases, and there are other reasons why it is not advisable. I mention it here merely as a matter of scientific interest. Notwithstanding the claims of the hypnotists that this test is capable of being produced only when the subject is in the deep stage of hypnosis, known as a cataleptic stage, all psychologists know that it may be produced in the wide-awake condition, and is merely a muscular test, having nothing whatever to do with the sleep condition. One underlying principle. You will see that one law governs all of these tests, and thousands of others of a similar nature which may occur to the experimenter. It is all a matter of the use of the will and the suggestion of the experimenter, accompanied by the relaxation of the will of the other person. The law of mentative induction is the real cause behind the phenomena. The suggestions render doubly efficient the willpower of the experimenter by giving the mind of the impressionable a mental image around which his mental poles materialize an action. Muscular tests and beyond. The above tests are what are known as muscular tests, all depending upon the control of the muscles of the impressionable by the will of the experimenter. Many of these tests are believed by the hypnotists and mesmerists to be possible of production only when their subjects are in the sleep condition, or at least only after they have been put to sleep and then aroused. As a matter of fact, sleep conditions have nothing whatever to do with this phenomena, as may be proven by the fact that all of the above tests may be performed without any suggestion of sleep or similar condition. There is a more remarkable class of phenomena than the above mentioned, which will be considered in the next chapter, all of which, also, may be produced without any attempt to induce sleep. This sleep delusion has led people astray for many years, but now it is known that the phenomena of sleep itself is merely an effect of mental impression and suggestion, instead of being the cause of the various phenomena known as mesmerism and hypnotism. Removing the impression. Referring to my repeated caution to remove the impression, I wish to call your attention to the fact that the best experimenters lay much stress upon the advisability, if not the absolute necessity, of removing the induced condition from the mind of the person experimented upon. Otherwise, he might carry away with him the induced condition or impression, which is often far deeper and stronger than is commonly believed to be the case. I urge this upon you specially. Do not neglect it. The conditions may readily be removed by the suggestion of, "Now you are all right now, you understand. You are now all right," accompanying the suggestion by the mental picture of their being relieved from the induced condition. The gentle touch of the hand, as in patting the part that has been controlled, will help to accentuate the effects of suggestion of "all right." Removing undesirable conditions. In this connection, it may be as well to mention that if you ever happen to come across an impressionable, or the tendency to manifest a drowsy condition, or the so-called sleep state of hypnotism, probably arising from previous suggestions, either direct from a hypnotist or from having witnessed a hypnotic exhibition, you may proceed to awaken him to the method just given for removing the impression. In such cases, you may make upward passes along the sides of his head, saying to him, sharply and positively, "Wake up. Wake up now," I say. "Wake up. Wide awake now. You're wide awake. Wide awake. All right now. All right, I say. All right. All right and wide awake. All right. All right." You may heighten the effect by snapping your fingers close to his face and slapping his shoulders sharply. Be sure to speak positively, firmly and sharply, just as a father would in rousing up a sleepy boy in the morning. And don't lose your head. You are not likely to have need for this advice in ordinary experiments, but I give it in case you happen to come across some impressionable or hyper-impressionable see-later chapters who may have been previously hypnotized by some operator who believed in the sleep condition and brought same about by suggestion. See later chapters. Or else some subject of the same class who has seen hypnotic subjects go asleep and induce the same state in himself by imitative self-impression. In such a case, I would advise that you afterwards give the subject a good, sound suggestive treatment to the effect that he will never again go to sleep in this way, that he is immune to hypnotic sleep suggestions, and in other ways build up in him a resistance to this deplorable condition. These sleep condition hypnotists have much to answer for which their plea of ignorance is not quite sufficient. End of chapter 8.